Hey, what's up guys? Justin here from CBI Off-Road. Today we're working on a 2022 Toyota Tundra. We're going to show you how to install this rear bumper. This thing is loaded with features. We got an integrated step on the side. We got recovery points built in right here. You can mount lighting in it. Your factory sensors all work, and you have your factory towing specs. Let me show you how to install it. All right, so our first step is we're gonna get everything laid out and unpacked and just make sure we got all of what we need to do this install. Come around for a closer look and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. All right, so we have, of course, the bumper, and starting at the far end over there, we have our main bumper mounting plates. We have our blind spot covers here. We have these springs used to calibrate our blind spot monitors. Of course, our general hardware here. These brackets are gonna secure our plastic pieces that we're gonna cut later on, and our bumper top plates. Once we got all that laid out, we're gonna start disassembling the factory bumper. All right, so now we're gonna get underneath the vehicle. We have some 10mm bolts inside the wheel well here, and a bunch of clips and 10mm bolts all the way around that we're gonna remove here. And we're gonna unplug some electrical under here. Come in tight, we'll show you that process. All right, so now that we got all the 10mm bolts and the plastic clips out on the bottom here, we're gonna jump over and start unplugging these wiring harnesses. All right, so we'll start with the trailer wiring here. There's a tab on top that you just pull downward, give it a good wiggle, and you'll be able to remove that. Then we have this plug right here, same thing, the tab's right here. We're just gonna push that down, give that guy a pull. And then back in here is the license plate light. Same thing, tabs on the bottom, give that a pull. The wiring going across here, it's secured with these little clips. We're also gonna pop those out just to free this up so the bumper can come off. We do have one more light over here. We'll go ahead and do that in the same fashion that we did this one right here. All right, so now think of this as an onion. We got layers. We're just gonna start peeling back the layers of this bumper. This is all plastic. It's not gonna be reused. So if you break some clips, it happens. So I'm gonna take a big screwdriver. We're gonna pry up this plastic panel, this one, and we're just gonna start working everything off to get down to the guts. All right, so now we've exposed these plastic clips to get this plastic piece out. We're gonna start working those out all the way around. All right, so we got all of our plastic clips out. We're gonna go ahead and pop this piece out, just enough to reach in to unplug these two sensors, and then we're gonna set this piece aside. So on these sensor clips, there's two blue tabs. You just pull those outward, and that'll release the sensor. All right, so that side was blue, this side's red, but same thing, we're just gonna pull these red tabs out, and that will release the sensor from that bucket. We will be reusing these buckets, so don't throw this piece away just yet. All right, so keep going with the onion process. We got 3 more clips here on each side, and then we're gonna start working these 12mm head bolts out. Just keep going on disassembly. All right, so next step, we're gonna pop this fender flare out, and that will expose another 10mm bolt right here. We're gonna remove that and then peel this painted panel out. Now we're gonna unplug this sensor, same way we did those. Just separate those tabs, it'll come right out. All right, so next step is we're gonna remove this piece here on the corner. So turn this clip counterclockwise to remove it with a Phillips head screwdriver. We got some 10mm bolts, there's 2 here. There's 1 kind of buried in there. We're gonna unplug this sensor, just depressing that tab, and then pop that wiring clip out. We should be able to remove this panel. All right, so we got the side panels off, and I went ahead and laid out how we're gonna cut this body panel. This is all ultimately gonna be covered up. So these measurements, we try to be precise, but really this one's not too big a deal because you're not gonna see any of this. It's gonna be tucked behind the bumper. But here's kind of a guide to how we've laid this out to cut. So we're gonna use a 5-inch cutoff wheel to cut on the underside of this tape. We'll come in tight and give you a closer shot of these measurements and how I got to this point. All right, so I measured down 2 inches from that hole right there, and you can double check with this factory bump that's kind of in the steel here. So that's this mark, and you can just follow that bump all the way around, and then basically on the corner line here, that's where we made our turn down. You can double check yourself with, again, 2 inches from this hole over. That's where we're gonna make our mark going down. Now, to get to this cut, we are at 4.5 inches from the center of this hole down. Again, you can feel a factory bump right there. We're right on that bump. This one's gonna cruise straight down, and then when we get to the fender well, there's this little plastic piece right under the mounting hole, and we're just ending right there. All right, so now that we got everything cut, I'm just gonna take a sanding disc and just smooth this out. Again, we don't have to have these lines perfectly straight or anything like that. We just wanna clean up all these burrs and just have a nice edge. And then I'm gonna take some black spray paint and just coat this edge so we don't get any rust. And also, as some extra credit, since this is a white vehicle, there's gonna be a lot of contrast when we put on the black bumper. So in between the body and the bumper, you'll still be able to see some of that white. So I'm just gonna go ahead and paint this whole panel black just so it blends in and we don't get that big contrast of white and black coming through. So we'll get this sanded, start hitting some spray paint. All right, so our next step is we have our factory piece of plastic here with the license plate lights in it. We're gonna reuse these lights, so we're gonna take them out of here and do some cutting to retain some of this bracketry to reuse in our new bumper. So take an 8mm and get these 2 bolts out on each light, and then I'll show you where to cut. All right, so our light's out, so we don't have to worry about accidentally cutting that when we cut this piece. But we're gonna make 2 cuts. One's just gonna be along this line right here, and then the other one is gonna be on the side, just right here. And again, these cuts don't have to be super great. You're not gonna be able to see it. It's gonna be tucked under there. We just need to maintain this base to remount the light in. Okay, last thing we need to do with this piece is remove the sensor. It's just 10mm bolt here, and then we're gonna clip it back into its spot and just kind of zip tie it out of the way. Then we can pitch this piece. All right, so now we're gonna reinstall these lights using the same bolts, and then we'll start prepping our new bumper for install. All right, so next step is we're gonna start installing parts into our new CBI bumper. We're starting with the OEM blind spot monitor. So these are side specific, so make sure that you take the correct side from the truck and put it in the same side on the bumper. So 3 bolts here, that comes out. And to install them, we have these springs that you're able to set and calibrate the level of this sensor. And we also have the cage nuts and bolts in this smaller bag that we'll be using. So on these springs, just get it snug, get it even. Chances are you're gonna have to go get these recalibrated at a Toyota dealer, but just get them even for now and they might work out good for you and you may not have to visit Toyota. It's just basically a lot of factors on the height of the vehicle, things like that. But just get it even for now and then take it for a test drive and test the sensors out. All right, so we're gonna take these cage nuts and those are gonna go in the 3 square holes in the bumper. So those, just kind of squeeze them and they'll click into place. Come from the back side. All right, so we got our cage nuts in. I'll pull the sensor out of here. 10mm bolts. Okay, done with that. Give this guy a little cleaning for those hardcore overlanders out there. All right, now we're gonna open up these springs. And the spring's gonna install with the bigger side facing in. And we're gonna kind of double up washers here. It's gonna be a little hard to start, but once you get it in place, it'll be good to go. So have the spring like that. We're gonna put a washer like that. Then the sensor will sit there. And on top of the sensor, we're gonna run in a bolt with another washer. So again, it's kind of a puzzle we'll have going on here, but once we get it in place, we'll be good to go. So start these one at a time, get everything hand tight. Like I said, just get it snug and make sure that sensor's even, and then we'll jump on the other side. All right, next up, we got some rigid SRM flush mount lights. We're gonna go ahead and install those also. These holes are pretty universal for a flush mount light about this size. Heretic, Baja Designs, all the common ones usually fit right in. So we're gonna go ahead and get these in and tighten down. All right, so now we're gonna prep our sensor buckets. So remove these guys out of the factory bumper. We're gonna reuse them in our CBI bumper. We just need to clean all this old adhesive off. So I have this 3M eraser, it works really well. Also any sort of adhesive remover and some elbow grease, probably get that taken care of. And then we'll apply new double-sided tape and get them stuck in the new bumper. All right, so now we got the old adhesive cleaned off of these sensor buckets, we're gonna install the new. So this is a little bit different than what you'll have. You'll probably have a sheet. I'm just gonna cut these pieces, but this is pretty much all we're going for here. Just a strip on each side, just enough to hold it in place. And we're just gonna do that to all these real quick, and then we'll get them stuck in the bumper. All right, now it's time to get these guys stuck in the CBI bumper. So the color matched sensor buckets are gonna go on the outsides, and the black ones are gonna go on the inside. And just make sure they all kind of have this slope. Just make sure that it's sloping upward to kind of level out that sensor, and make sure it's nice and straight in there before you totally stick it in. So just kind of get it in place and then stick it down firmly. All right, so now we're gonna install these larger 3/8 cage nuts in these 4 square holes down in the center of the bumper. These are gonna be provisions for the bump stop bracket. If you're doing swing arms, we'll address the swing arm install in a separate video. For right now, we're just gonna install these cage nuts and run these black bolts in. Okay, last thing we're gonna do to these light housings is we're gonna just trim this tab right here. So the light sits in like this. So we just need to trim this tab flush with this surface here so that the light fits nice and tight in the bumper. We're gonna do that to each one, and then we'll be ready to install them. All right, so now we're gonna install our top plates. So this process is gonna be a little bit different on your bumper. This is a prototype. So here we just have a regular round hole. So what I'm gonna do is get this bolt in and started, and I'm gonna have to hinge this out. You will have a square hole right here that you'll put a cage nut in, similar to the ones that we just did here and in the sensor slots there. So get the cage nut in, and then you'll be able to do your top plates once the bumper's on the vehicle. So my process is gonna be a little bit different from yours because I'm doing this bolt down here, but the rest of them will be installed with the bumper on the vehicle. All right, now we're gonna loosely install these lights. So take your longer bolt, your factory one, slide it through this larger hole over here, and then we're just gonna get it started on this bolt right here, or this nut right here. All right, last couple things we have to do, and then we'll be ready to get the bumper on. So we have some plastic caps on the inside and outside of the frame rails on both sides, so we'll need to pop those out with a flathead screwdriver. And then we'll be ready to remove these bolts and install our main mounting brackets for the bumper. So we'll get you in and show you exactly what I'm talking about there. All right, so we got these 3 bolts. We're just gonna back the nuts off and slide our mounting plate right over this. So this is a 22 millimeter. Just make sure you hold the inside. And if your vehicle has been through the ringer, you're gonna want some eye protection. All right, notice I left these bolts hand tight, so we have some adjustment when we get our bumper on there to get all these holes lined up. We're now ready to get our bumper in place and bolted down. All right, so we have the bumper just kind of sitting in place. We're not all the way to where we need to be, but we have a lot of extra room in here to reach in and plug these sensors in. So the blind spots, those can wait till we get the bumper all the way in place, but for these guys, it's a good idea to do them right now while you have the space. Okay, so now we're gonna take our longer bolt with a washer on it. We're gonna slide it through this hole, the frame, and then we're gonna get a washer and a nut on the inside. Just be really careful as you're moving this into place that you don't pitch the bumper off and pretty much crush yourself to death. Okay, so we got all of our bolts started in the bumper. We're gonna go ahead and get everything else plugged in, all of our sensors, our trailer, all of our lighting plugged in. Then we're gonna jump on the outside and kind of put it in final position to get our alignment squared away, and then we'll get everything tightened down. Okay, so right now we're getting our alignment on the bumper. So we're just using 2 jack stands just to kind of take the bumper up straight. We're just kind of eyeballing this gap right here with the tail light. You obviously don't want to be too close to the tail light. A good 3/8 of an inch is always a good kind of guide to where you're going to be safe, and it's still going to be a nice tight gap. So once you get it evened out, we're going to jump underneath and tighten everything down. All right, so now that we have this swung out of the way, we can access our tail light bolt right here. So I'm using a 12mm deep socket. We can get in here, snug this guy up. And again, your top plates won't be on yet, so this will be easy money. Just get that snug and make sure this hole is lined up with the light underneath. You can still reach underneath and kind of push it into place, but just make sure when you snug that down that you're good and lined up here. Now you'll be ready to get your top plate on and all the bolts in. All right, so now we're just gonna install these covers that go over the blind spots. Just get these black bolts, get some anti-seize on there, start them all by hand, don't try to force it or cross thread it, and then we'll just get these snugged down with a 5/16 Allen. All right, so now we have the corner pieces that our sensors were mounted in. We're just gonna cut a little section out of here that we're gonna reuse on the truck. So here I've outlined it with the silver line. So we're just gonna cut here and then up here, and then we're gonna use this piece. We don't need all of this. We're just gonna reuse this top portion. All right, so we had to trim just a little bit more on this just based on our bumper being a little higher, so you may have to kind of dial this piece in also. But the next step is we're gonna take our little bracket here, we're gonna install that. I'm gonna show you, we're gonna drill a hole in this piece, just right here in this corner. Doesn't have to be perfect, you know, because we have some adjustability with this slot here. So drill a hole approximately 1/4 inch to a 5/16 size, and then I'll show you how to attach this to this bracket. All right, so we have that hole back there from the factory and the factory bolt that came out of it. So this is our bracket. We're gonna use the slotted side up against there. So let's just get this in place and hand tight. And then once we get our plastic piece in here, then we'll go ahead and tighten it up. All right, so we got our bracket in place and our support. We're gonna go ahead and tighten these down with a 10mm and then a 7/16 for this, and get this clipped in, and we'll be ready to get our layout for our cut for this, this plastic piece. All right, so now let's talk about the cut and where we're gonna get our measurements. So we got kind of two ways that we can do this, both of which you can kind of verify your numbers and make sure that you're gonna have a nice, clean, straight cut. So take your time with this process, get everything laid out, use a good straight edge, use a good tape measure, all those kinds of things will really help out. So the first measurement we're gonna pull is right behind this fender. I'm just gonna put the tape measure straight. In our bumper, yours may be a little bit different depending on your adjustment, so double check yours. Mine is sitting at right at 6 inches to the top of this bumper. And then the other measurement I like to use is right in this point right here. We can get our tape measure there, and I'm sitting at 5 3/4. So I'll take my numbers over there to the piece, we'll get it drawn out. But these are two pretty good points right here. The other good point is from the front of your fender flare all the way back to where the bumper starts angling up. We can get a good measurement there. I'm sitting at 20 and about 20 and a half. So that's where my angle is gonna start going up. So we'll go to the piece and I'll show you how that all lays out. All right, so here's the same piece that we just measured over there on the driver's side. So we have, you can see where the fender flare sits right here. So my measurement was 6 inches. I gave myself a 1/2 inch extra, and just because we can sand more away, but obviously if you cut too much off, you're kind of in a bad position. So let's give it a 1/2 inch that we can sand up. So I'm at 6 1/2 here. And then on the point, remember we measured that, I was at 5 3/4. So I gave myself that extra 1/2 inch. So I'm sitting at 6 1/4 right now. Then we have our 20 1/2 measurement all the way back here. Once we get these two measurements, we can dial that line across, and then where we find out that line ends is our 20 1/2 right there. Now come in close and I'll show you where we get this angle right here. All right, now to get where this angle ties in, you can see the two slots here on top. We're about an 1/8 inch back from this rear slot. So you'll make that line all the way across, then you'll have a point right here, and you had your point down here from your 20 1/2 measurement. We'll just connect those dots and that'll be your cut line. Again, cut long and sand to the line. Okay, so we got our initial cut done. I have the piece up here. You can see we're way too long, but we're just gonna use this tape to make a new line where we need to sand up to, and we'll just keep going on and off sanding till we get a nice, good, clean line. All right, so we got our cut all nice and dialed in here on these pieces. What we're gonna do now is trim the excess inner fender liner and get that tucked up out of the way, and then put back in our 10mm bolts on both sides. So we'll get at that with a razor knife or a pair of really sharp scissors, probably do you just fine also. All right, guys, thanks for watching today's install video, the 2022 Tundra rear bumper. As always, like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments below your favorite feature. Thanks.